Hello and welcome to the Film Pulse Podcast. This is episode number 378. My name's Adam Patterson. With me today we got Kevin Rakestraw. Hey, Kevin.
Hi.
This week on the show, we will be continuing our Fantasia Festival coverage by bringing you 4 more reviews for movies screening at the virtual edition of Canada's Genre Film Festival, including Chasing Dream, Bleed With Me, Private Chat, and The Paper Tigers. Of course, we'll also be going over this week's new releases on VOD and Blu-ray as well. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Please remember to review us on iTunes if you get a moment. That would be super helpful. Just 2 things I wanted to mention at the top of the show. First, I know that we're talking about Fantasia Festival this week, and as such, we are not going to be reviewing Bill and Ted Face the Music, but I just wanted to quickly mention it here and say that I did see it this weekend, and I absolutely loved it. If you have the opportunity, please go out and rent it. I think you'll find it to be just a delight. It is just it's a beacon of positivity in an otherwise very, very depressing year. It's kind of everything that I hoped it would be, really.
Good.
It's excellent. So, yeah, be sure to rent Bill and Ted Face the Music. Please don't pirate it. Please don't torrent it. What Orion did, making the decision to release probably one of their biggest movies ever on VOD because of the pandemic, I think it was a smart choice. But, you know, unlike New Mutants or whatever, they're actually putting safety first, even though they knew that the second that movie came out, people would be pirating it. So please just rent the movie. The other thing that I think that we should mention is everybody's talking about the passing of Chadwick Boseman, and I just wanted to acknowledge it on this show. It's a terrible tragedy. I've really liked the sort of outpouring on social media of, you know, stories about him and really lovely anecdotes, and he seems like he was such a fantastic guy, and just the fact that he was going through all of that while making some of the, you know, biggest, you know, the Marvel movies and stuff, like turning himself into an icon, really, during all of this. I mean, yeah.
That's the craziest part to me, is that, like, it wasn't like that he was just doing work while fighting colon cancer. Is that he was doing, like, huge work. Like, he was becoming, like you said, an icon.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane.
Yeah, it's just terribly sad. It was quite an evening for me, because I had just come off of Bill and Ted 3, and I was just feeling so great. You know, I had so much positivity in my heart after watching that, and like immediately after the credits started to roll, I checked my phone and I saw it, and I was just like, oh my god, just awful. All right, let's try to be a little bit more uplifting here and talk about some of our movies. I don't know how uplifting we're going to be with this batch, unfortunately, but
yeah,
let's see what we can do. I guess we can go in the order in which I mentioned them. We're starting off with Chasing Dream. This is the new one from Johnny To. Now, if you've listened to our show in the past, we're both pretty big fans of Johnny To's work. Straight up love a bunch of his movies. So, remember Full-Time Killer? I was just reminded of that.
Mm-hmm.
Man, Full-Time Killer, so good. Just so good. I have a synopsis here for this one. Strap in, because I read this synopsis to myself earlier. Here we go. A young man and woman are meeting each other and establishes a special relationship due to debt problems. Him finds that her have a singing talent and help her develop a singing career. For its part, he also strives to become the champion of the boxing championship. Both have the same state of mind and fight for their dream. Even if they burn their lives, they will have no regrets in this life. So that seems like a Google Translate synopsis. What you have here now, surprisingly, it does sort of summarize the movie. I mean,
I mean, it's better than some of the other parts that
Yeah,
we've
yeah.
read before.
It definitely does describe the movie. This is kind of an odd one. What you have here is sort of two stories that are happening at the same time. You have this guy who's an MMA fighter, and his story. He finds out that he can't continue fighting because he's has a myriad of health issues that are related to his fighting. Runs the risk of getting glaucoma, going blind, Parkinson's. His liver's failing. All these issues. So it's his journey, and then it's also this young woman that he meets and sort of falls for, and her journey to become a famous singer. And the movie's kind of really all over the place. I mean, this movie's it's like one of these kitchen sink type movies where it's a musical of sorts, but it's also this kind of sports film, but it's also this kind of weird, like, quirky comedy. But then it's also this really kind of heavy drama, and then there's also a love story in there too.
It's pretty much everything.
Yeah, there's so much crammed into this movie, and I gotta say, like, for me, it just was not hitting the right notes for me. Like, I really, really struggled getting through this movie. It's just under 2 hours, just shy of 2 hours, and it was really fighting with me to hold my attention. I just couldn't get on board with the tone, like, just the crazy tonal shifts that it was making. And, you know, there would be like one segment where I was starting to get into it a little bit, and then it would completely shift gears and I'd be pulled out of it again. So I just really, really struggled with this movie.
Yeah, and I definitely did from the outset. Number one, because I had no idea what Chasing Dream was about. I didn't know anything about it. It's just you told me it was the new Johnny Toe, so I was like, all right, yeah, I'll watch that. So, the way that it starts off, you're like, okay, this is like a MMA fighting. Gotcha. And then you quickly realize that it's going to be a number of things all at once, and you, like you said, the tonal shifts to it is really off-putting. Like, I couldn't get my footing with this film, within like the first like half hour. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I didn't know what we were doing. And the other thing that makes it difficult, two-parter, is one, the acting is all very, very exaggerated. Like, they're just really into it, which was a little bit difficult. And then also, it just seemed like everything was CG. Everything just seemed extremely fake. Like, everything, like background, like just every inch of this movie was CG except for the people. But even then, the people are doing, like wire stunts when they don't really need to be. They're just like flying around.
Yeah,
it's something.
Everything is over exaggerated. Everything is very animated, and by that I mean, like, the characters are overacting. The situations that they're in are just over the top. I mean, it's hyper stylized, this movie, and the energy level is just at a constant fever pitch in this movie too. You have no opportunity to, like, sort of catch your breath and just really kind of assess what you just watched, because it's just going from one thing to the next to the next to the next, and like, I just didn't.
And what it's hopping to and from are so completely different.
Yeah, it's very.
What really throws you off too is that you're in like hyper stylized MMA fighting going on, and the next thing you know, it's this American Idol competition.
Yep.
And it's just, it's tough because I was a lot like you, where I would kind of get into it. Like, I would give myself over to what was going on. I'm like, you know what, this isn't normally my type of thing, but I got to give it to them. They're doing a pretty good job of this, all things considered, considering everything that this movie is. I got to say, like, to me, it could have been a complete train wreck, and I'm pretty surprised that it's not. But you're right. Like, I would kind of get into it, and then I'd be taken out, and then I would kind of get into it and be taken out, which makes it really, really difficult in terms of like trying to assess this movie. Because if you ask me now, I would say, it's like, it's like a 5. I'm like right down the middle because I enjoy half of it. The other half is a bit too much for me. You could ask me 10 minutes from now, and I would say that it's like a 7 because, I was just overall impressed with all of it. And then you could ask me 10 minutes from that, and I would say it's like a 3 because it's way too sickening.
Yeah, to me, it's very messy. It's like taking 2 movies and just splicing them into one. And I mean, it was just too much for me.
It's not even 2 movies. It's like 7.
I mean, they're full on dance musical numbers in this too. Like
big ones. Full,
big musical numbers in this, which is just crazy. Like the only thing I knew about it going into it, aside from it being Johnny To's new movie, was that I thought that it was going to be like an MMA like fighting story, but it's just so much more than that. So I didn't know about the whole American Idol style, like that whole half of it.
Yeah.
Either.
And then you have him like trying to open up a hot pot.
Yeah.
Restaurant.
He's trying to open up a restaurant too. And then there's the whole
romance,
the romance thing, the boxing gym. They're running out of food at the boxing gym, and then there's the granny's story and her. There's so much in this movie. It's just jam packed with content that doesn't seem to ever quite fit together.
Yeah,
like
again, like there is a part of me that's like kind of impressed that this isn't just an absolute train wreck.
No, I don't think it's a train wreck, but I think that it comes very close. Like I feel like most of the wheels are off the track. There's like one wheel. There's like one wheel holding it on.
But everyone's like really excited about it.
Yeah,
everyone's just, and I think that's what helped it for me, especially the main guy. Like he is fucking. He's so enthusiastic.
Yeah, he's
about
pumped.
Everything.
He's so pumped. Like especially eating. Like he really loves to eat.
Mm-hmm.
Man, he's just scarfing throughout this whole movie. Just shoveling food in his face.
And I did like that reoccurring joke of the rocker girl ended up in a full body.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, there's this whole comedy aspect of it too. Like, so right whenever anything gets a little bit too serious, Johnny To wants to remind the audience that this is like this sort of just fancy, like crazy, over the top story, and like you have these little goofy moments in it where, yeah, like this one of the contestants at the American Idol, it's called like Diva. I can't remember what the name of the actual show.
I think Perfect Diva, I think.
Perfect Diva, yeah, something like that. You have this one contestant where every time you see her, she has some other like horrific injury, and I think that just plays into the drama. He's sort of poking fun at the drama of those reality dancing or reality singing competitions, and I thought that was pretty funny.
Oh God!
A lot of the humor, unfortunately, a lot of the humor didn't really work for me. Like, I just thought it was too cartoonish and silly. Like it felt more. Yeah, it felt more like the comedies that we would see coming out of China in like the 80s and 90s, where it was just so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Overall,
it's something else.
It's something else. I mean, it really, like, when I was watching this, I sent you a message. I thought it was over. Like, I thought the movie was over, and I realized that I had an hour left.
Yeah.
Because there's like this one, there's just like one thing, and it feels like it's kind of at a stopping point where like he wins this big fight, and she wins the like singing thing, and you're just like, oh, okay, well, there we go, it's all wrapped up. But no, there's an hour left.
Yeah, and then which is it gets even crazier because then his master, his boxing teacher, is like, "I'm gonna fight this dude," and it's like you're like 50 years old and you haven't trained. Like you're gonna get destroyed. He's gonna murder you,
Yeah, he wasn't
and
even
then
an
it
MMA
becomes a whole new
fighter.
movie. He's a boxer. It wasn't really in shape.
Yeah, for me it was just too scattered, too scattershot, too much going on. Wasn't focused enough for me. I don't see myself scoring this anything higher than a 5. I'm probably going to be like a 4.5 on this one, and
Yeah,
I'm not going to fluctuate with that score. It's going to
yeah,
stay. It's going to stay at like a 4.5 for me because I just, like you said, there are moments that I was into it. I was really into it. I liked a lot of the fight scenes, even though yes, they did unnecessarily use wires sometimes. I still thought that the fight scenes looked good, like they were shot well.
Well,
And
and I think that's the thing for me is that like all these elements, if they were separate, they're all well done. It's just not my cup of tea. All of them being together,
right.
like it's just like a crazy hog maul of a movie.
And then there was like the whole thing where like one of the judges on the Diva show was like her ex-boyfriend too, so like there was that whole conflict.
Yeah, stole all of her music, and that's how he became. Yeah, there's just it's just not my cup of tea. Like it's not a poorly made movie or anything in my eyes. It's just not my thing.
Yeah, it's just just way too much.
So unwieldy.
It is very very unwieldy. I mean, props to Johnny Toe for taking all of those things and
That's why that's the
managing
thing
to
that
put them
that gets me.
together. Unfortunately, that's not enough for me to be like,
Yeah,
yeah, you should seek this movie out immediately.
it's wild. If you're looking for essentially like an MMA remake of all the Rocky movies with an American Idol competition crammed in and a romance movie and large musical dance numbers plus debt collecting plus restaurant stuff.
Restaurant
Like
management,
it has.
a restaurant management drama.
It has just about everything. Because I was pretty excited when he got that restaurant. Because his like enthusiasm, you thought his enthusiasm was high to begin with. When he finally gets the restaurant, it like triples,
Yeah,
and you're just like, this guy is fucking living his dream. I'm so happy for this dude.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely. I think the first thing you said to me was it's different, and I can wholeheartedly mirror that sentiment. It is different.
Sure is. Sure is.
Let's move on and talk about our next film, Bleed with Me. This is directed by Amelia Moses. I have a synopsis here. At an isolated winter cabin, a young woman begins to suspect that her best friend is stealing her blood.
Yes.
Now, this is kind of an interesting one. We had a conversation offline about this briefly today too. A lot of people are really high on this one. A lot of people are saying it's like one of the best movies of the festival and all of this. However, I think that we both wholeheartedly disagree with that. In fact, for me, this was one of the low points of the festival. I just could not get on board with Bleed with Me at all, like in any regard.
Yes.
I think that it's I like slow burn horror movies. This is one of these sort of no burn horror movies where nothing really happens at all, and it's this kind of psychological thriller where you're not sure if what is happening is real, or if the main character of Rowan is, if she's imagining things, if she's hurting herself because she keeps waking up and she has like cuts on her arm. and you know that there's like some sort of history of trauma in her past. But for me, it was just poorly made on a technical level. Like, I did not find the performances to be believable or compelling whatsoever. I thought that the characters were fairly one note. I thought that the script was very poorly written. Like, people don't talk like how they talk in this movie. It does not feel natural to me. The amount of times I want to play a drinking game where you take a shot every time someone says Rowan in this movie, because it's just like every 2 seconds, Rowan, Rowan, Rowan. Like, who says their friends' names that many times?
Yeah, it's really difficult. And I remember texting you while watching this movie because that's the number one thing I hate in terms of independent films. And this is something that you always see in independent films. It's the dialogue where it's so frustrating that someone will say something to someone and the other person will just not respond at all. Just doesn't say a word. Someone says good night, the other person, absolutely nothing. And it's like, who acts like this? Like, just common decency, just to be like, yeah, you too, something, some sort of acknowledgement. And that's like the entirety of this movie is just someone saying something and the other person just absolutely not saying a word. The person wakes up and it's like, hey, you're bleeding. That person that's bleeding doesn't say anything. Absolutely nothing. Which is it's so unbelievably frustrating because it's just like, you don't feel like people. Like, none of these characters feel like real people. To me, they just felt like set dressing. That's it. Like, no one acts like a person, and it's really, really difficult to get in. This is a movie that was, for me, every single aspect of it was completely unengaging.
Yeah,
Like, nothing worked for me on any level.
yeah. Unfortunately, I agree with you 100%. I found it to be just way too dry. I could not connect with any of the characters, and I think, again, it just has to do with the script just not working for me on any level. Like, it was just it was like a set in this kind of bland cabin, and I feel like it's just, we've seen so many of these movies where it takes place in an isolated cabin and it's a psychological thriller and they're dealing with inner turmoil, and it's just, but there was just nothing here. It didn't add anything to the conversation, and I think that was one of the frustrating aspects of it. It doesn't go anywhere.
And that's the thing that really, really gets me. Because, the reason I picked this movie is because of that synopsis, stealing her blood. I'm like, okay, I don't know if I've really seen a movie where someone suspects their friend of stealing their blood.
Yeah.
Like, that should be interesting.
Yeah.
But it's not really, because it does the same thing that we've seen in so many movies, which is this stuff really happening? Is she seeing, like, is it drugs? Is she, is this stuff really happening? And I'm just, at this point in time in my life, with movies like this, I'm just like, you figure it out. You let me know when stuff is actually happening, and then I will pay attention. Because I don't have time for this where you, like, show me something, and then it's a quick cut to be like, actually, that didn't happen. But you're wasting my time. I'm sorry.
Yeah, where something will happen, and then it shows the character waking up, and you're like, "Uh-oh, was it a dream?
Yeah.
Was it real?"
I don't have time for that.
We know she sleepwalks. Did she sleepwalk it?
Yeah. Figure it out. Get back to me.
Figure it out. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. I just, this one did not work for me on any level, unfortunately. I'm glad that other people are really digging it, and I'm glad that it's speaking to people on some level, but just for me, it was not there. I didn't think it was good on really any level.
There's one other thing. There's a number of times where the main character, Rowan, like, she progressively gets worse and she's in bed a lot, right? And there's a number of times where she's in bed, the door's closed, and the couple that she's spending the weekend with are, like, just outside the door talking about what's going on. And was something that I got confused with, and that's why I asked you, like, did I miss something? Because I couldn't, no matter how high I turned the volume up, I couldn't understand what they were saying outside of the door. And I'm like, am I supposed to be like hearing this stuff, or am I supposed to be like Rowan, where I can make out bits and pieces? Like, I'm not 100% sure. Like, if there was anything there, because I just missed all of it, which brought me to something that kind of irritates me with screeners, is that a large majority of screeners have no subtitle options.
Correct.
Which is really, really frustrating. And like, I don't even actually have a problem. I mean, I might if I went to a doctor. I have trouble hearing things. But for people that are actually like hearing impaired, it seems like it might be a good fucking idea to have subtitles.
I know, like, I often, not often, but I have thought about that before. Like, what, I mean, there are film critics who are hearing impaired, and what do they do in those situations? Especially because, you know, a lot of times, and I know this is like totally inside baseball and it's totally like a first world problem type thing, but a lot of times you get a screener and it will not be of very good quality. And like the audio is not great and the video is not great. And like, what do people who have, you know, hearing or sight disabilities do during these times?
Yeah.
Because I know for me, like I have really poor eyesight, and like when I watch movies, I try to watch it on a very large screen, and you know, for some of these movies, it's like it looks really, really bad when you blow it up to a large screen.
Well, in a movie like this too, which is another issue that I have with it, a lot of these movies that are going for the the slow burn, trying to create this like atmosphere of dread, or whatever you want to call it. There's so much of them are just black. Like you can't see anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, I can't see anything. Everything's black. I can't understand anyone. No one's really talking to begin with, and when they do talk, I can't hear them. Like, what's the point of me even watching this?
And I never even got a sense that any of these people really knew. They didn't know. It felt like they didn't know each other at all. Even the boyfriend and girlfriend, it felt like they didn't really know each other. Yeah. And they certainly didn't know Rowan.
Thing it was all put in. Yeah, that's the thing that got me. Is like none of these people felt like people.
I didn't even think that they were friends. Like it seemed like Rowan was like a coworker of the other woman, and like they barely knew each other. But then all of a sudden, you have like the boyfriend, like, we just want to help you, Rowan. We just want to help. Like, maybe you should just end this trip. Maybe this trip is just not working out, and you need to go home. I don't know.
Yeah. Especially because you won't even talk to each other. What's this?
There's no communication here.
No, it just doesn't seem like people that would go on trips with each other. If I don't like being around people and talking to people, if you ask me, hey, you want to come to my cabin? Me and my boyfriend are going to the cabin. You want to come along? I'm going to be like, no, I'm going to stay at home because I don't like talking to people.
Unfortunately, that one's a miss. Bleed with me.
Yes.
Moving on to another one that I think that both of us will say is also a miss. We have Private Chat. This is directed by Ben Hosey. I have a synopsis here for this one. An erotic drama where love, loneliness, and yearning play out online and IRL. Jack is an internet gambler living in NYC. After the death of his roommate, he becomes fixated on Scarlett, a cam girl from San Francisco. His obsession reaches a boiling point when fantasy materializes in reality and Jack sees Scarlett on a rainy New York City Chinatown street. Kevin, start us off with this one. What did you think of Private Chat?
I did not like Private Chat. And I found this far more, I don't know, it pissed me off more than Believe With Me. Believe With Me didn't really piss me off. I was just like, okay, there's nothing really happening. I don't enjoy this. Private Chat is a movie that just kind of pissed me off because I hated the main character. Also, this has nothing to do with the movie. It just, it kept throwing me off because I kept thinking he was the guy, the kid from Stranger Things, the hair guy, the guy with the hair.
Yeah.
I forget what that guy's name is.
Is it? I can't remember. Is it like Steve? Steve, in his character name? I know who you're talking about though.
Yeah. And it just felt like this like really skeezy fantasy world where this guy gets obsessed with a dominatrix on the internet, and everything just works out for him. You know, I mean, yeah, he has some things that like don't work out, but overall, you know, he stalks the hell out of her. You know, Scarlett, played by Julia Fox, stalks the hell out of her. Finds out that she lives in New York, so you know he's a creeper and stalks her, and then also like breaks into her house, and you know at the end he gets the girl. So you just gotta stalk enough. You know, if you just hang in there, things will work out for you. Give me a fucking break.
I feel the exact same way as you. And I, in my written review, I discussed this and how I feel like this is a possibly damaging movie. And I don't feel like the director was intending on it to be sort of a movie that does that, but that is what happens. I mean, especially what happens at the end. The finale is what really undoes everything in this movie. And I think having the central character be the creepy online stalker person is, you know, you can do that, but there has to be consequences. And unfortunately, like what happens in this movie is not that. He's not a sympathetic character. He deserves to have bad things happen to him because he's a bad person, and none of that plays out in the movie. There are really no consequences, and the consequences that do happen are so, you know, surface level. Like it hardly even matters. And
yeah,
I think that, you know, having the focus be on the like stalker guy as opposed to the sex worker, I think that is also reductive. Like, he should not be the central character here. It should be Julia Fox's character, Scarlett. Like, she should be the one taking center stage, who's having, you know, this creepy guy stalking her. But I feel like it's like this is like an incel type movie. Like, I think that incels could get behind this movie and what happens in it.
And I can understand having a character, you know, yes, he's unlikable, he's an awful person, bad things should happen to him. And in the real world, a lot of times bad things don't happen to these people. So that's understandable. But the choices that Julia Fox's character makes towards the end is what undoes it for me. And this is something that gets me, because this is 2 movies now that this has happened. I think the thing that really, really gets me is the fact that she's a dom. And that you have the same thing in the movie Dogs Don't Wear Pants, where you have women that are, you know, they're doms, where it's like their whole thing is them being in charge. They're dominating you. And in both movies, these guys they stalk and stalk and stalk. And then finally the woman decides to turn over a new leaf and changes it. And she's not going to dominate you and humiliate you anymore. She's going to meet you halfway.
Well, yeah, and this is the funny thing, and I also mentioned that in my written review, where you have this character, Julia Fox's character is on the surface, when you're first introduced to her, she seems like this, like, you know, powerful, in control person, but then when you look at her real life, she's the one who is just constantly dominated by all the men in her life. And I think that writing it that way is, I just don't think that it's something that we should be reflecting. Like, you know, write a stronger character.
It just doesn't work. Like, it doesn't add up.
Like, I mean, not only does she start to come around on Jack and his actions, but there is a little bit of the story where we see like her personal life. So the perspective does change every now and then over to Julia Fox's character, Scarlett. And like, she's basically just working so that she can pay for her boyfriend's stupid bullshit play or whatever.
Yeah. I was confused by that because it's like, we got the liquor license, Duke's is open. And then like they're doing a play.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how New York works.
Well,
I guess it's like
the boyfriend,
small theater in the front of their apartment that has a liquor license. Seating for 14 people.
Yeah, New York's
going to be raking in that money.
New York's a weird place, man. Yeah, the boyfriend's a piece of shit too, and I just had this really bad taste in my mouth throughout this whole movie where it went. Again, especially the finale. I think that the finale is what really undoes the whole thing, and I think it could have turned out very differently had the climax been different.
It bothers me, again, 2 movies now, and maybe there's more, but there's 2 movies where there's a dominatrix, this very strong woman, in control, making money for herself, and that getting completely changed by a stalker, and both are directed by men. It's just, it doesn't add up. It doesn't work. There's no way.
It does feel like this kind of weird perv fantasy movie. I would say if you're looking for a good thriller that explores the world of doing webcam shows, check out the movie Cam by Daniel Goldhaber. That movie, I think, does a really good job of exploring that whole world, which I think is a fascinating one. I mean, we're there. I believe the whole like cam girl industry is sort of exploding right now as the technology gets better and more accessible and everything, and there are inherent dangers to that line of work that I don't think a lot of people really think about or consider. And this was a movie that seemed to want to explore that, but never really did it. And I think a movie like Cam does a much better job of looking at that vocation and the perils that could occur for anyone who decides to get into that line of work. And I feel like we need more movies that support people who decide to get into the sex work profession, and I feel like that this movie does not do that. I feel like that it's reductive when it comes to its subject matter, and it just bothered me the whole time. And then plus I feel like that there's a lot of sort of these like pseudo provocative moments in this movie where they show pretty much everything. There's a lot of like jerking off scenes in this. Like Peter Vac just jerks it. He's just always jerking off, and they were like, oh, let's show it. Let's have this dude actually be jerking off in this scene. And
yeah, which I think that compounds things. That you have a movie that's just not really working on that level and being reductive and being really creepy and skeezy. And then on top of it, be like, you know what? Like a fifth of this movie is just going to be this guy jerking off. How about that? And you're just like, I don't want to watch him jerk off. That's not why I watch movies.
Right. So I didn't think that was necessary at all to show that. And I think that just to try to throw in a positive here with this movie, I thought that it looked good. I liked the representation of New York in this. The fact that a lot of it took place in Chinatown at night. And I think that Hosey sort of did a good job in capturing that sort of New York grime that I love so much.
Mm-hmm.
So you have like a lot of these, handheld shots just tracking Jack as he's wandering around Chinatown at night, going into bodegas and stuff like that. And I think that it was a good representation of the city. but that's pretty much where my positive thoughts end on Private Chat.
Yeah.
Buddy Duress is in there.
Yep.
So get to see him. I always like to see him in movies.
That was really the main reason I picked this movie, is because of him. And I forget what I read, but it just said like New York scuzz, and I was like, all right.
Yeah, I'm down for some New York scuzz. Felt like it felt like Hosey was trying to channel Abel Ferrara in this, and it might have worked on a slight visual level, but everything else did not really work. But then again, Ferrara is really hit or miss for me, so maybe it did work.
Just gotta hang in there with your stalking. Be resilient.
It's degenerate gambling.
It fucking worked out for you. Which didn't make sense to me. He does online gambling. Blackjack. Which I don't know how he's making any money doing that. Like, they're all rigged.
Yeah. Yep. All right. That's Private Chat. Unfortunately, I can't recommend that one. Let's go ahead and give it a score. This one's really tough for me. Actually, I think I can't remember if I scored it in my review, which is not up yet, but will be by the time this comes out. For me, it's like probably 2.5.
Yeah, this is like a 1.
Cool.
It's a 1. It's just no.
All right. Let's end things on a high note. Our final movie that we're going to be talking about is The Paper Tigers. This is directed by Kwok Bo Chan. I have a synopsis here. 3 kung fu prodigies have grown into washed-up middle-aged men, now one kick away from pulling their hamstrings. But when their master is murdered, they must juggle their dead-end jobs, dad duties, and old grudges to avenge his death. This one was interesting to me because I think movies like this movie is a very light, funny, energetic action comedy that it has a positive message, and it's just a good time. And I think that, like Bill and Ted 3, movies that have this sort of positive tone to them, I think, at least for me, are getting a big bump in my enjoyment just because of the times we're living in. So I think any movies that come out that make you feel good, any feel good movies that happen to come out, I think that I'm reviewing them more favorably than maybe I would otherwise. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Either way, I really had a good time with The Paper Tigers.
Yeah, this was quite the surprise. I was not expecting this movie to be as good as it is. And to me, it feels very, very much like a throwback. This feels like an old movie to me. And I don't mean that in the sense of like, they play up to like nostalgia or anything along those lines. It has that feeling of an old movie where it has heart, but it's not like, it doesn't come off corny, but it kind of toes that line. Like, it gets close, kind of pushes that envelope, being like, and just crossing over and being overly corny. And it just worked. I don't know if it was like the mood that I was in. Like, this was the perfect thing for that moment for me.
Yeah.
It was like a balm. And it just, I was so into it. And especially like the opening sequence where you have these 3, the 3 prodigies, and I guess their thing, when they were teenagers, is they went around with their camcorder, and anytime they got into a fight, they filmed it. So like the whole opening, kind of giving you an idea of who these kids are, is just a bunch of, VHS tapes of them kicking the shit out of people. And you're just like, this is fucking great.
And I think that the one of the things with that is that the fight choreography is actually really good. And so when you're seeing these like old VHS style footage of these kids getting into these fights, it's exciting. Like you're just like, damn. Like especially when I think it was like the last segment of that where they fought Carter the last time, and he he smashed him through a wall, and you're just like, whoa. Yeah, I completely mirror your sentiment here. I think that it does feel like a throwback in a lot of ways, and it does get very, very close to that kind of sappiness and like over sentimentality, but it never for me, it never crosses the line. It never completely goes overboard with the the heartfelt cheesiness. It
Yeah.
gets very close, but I feel like it never quite goes over the edge into that kind of sappy territory.
No, because it seems like he knows exactly how to balance it. To me, it was well balanced throughout. It's like anytime that it got close to that cheesiness, or that over sentimental, like it'd be a perfectly placed joke or a perfectly placed visual gag, or a fight sequence. Like it was just like the pacing of it and the balance of everything throughout this movie. Just it worked perfectly for me.
Yeah.
And I really liked the three main guys. Like I want it to be a franchise. Like I want to see more of them doing this.
Yeah, that was exactly what I thought at the end. Like, I would love to see a sequel to this. Like, I don't know where they would go with it or anything, but I liked the characters so much and I enjoyed the story so much that I could spend more time with these characters in this world and like just see things develop further. Like it's a story where these people they're learning stuff, they're learning from each other, they're learning from kung fu, they're learning from all of this, and where it goes, I feel like let's see where it goes from here.
Yeah, and not only do I want them to extend out the Three Tigers and what they're doing from henceforth, but I also want like a prequel. Like, let's get a movie focusing on the three teens doing the kung fu too. Like, let's just open this up.
Turn into a
the
Paper
world
Tigers extended universe. Let's go.
I'm totally for it. Honestly, I just like it. Like you could have the prequel. It's just like Carter gets the shit kicked out of him like 47 times.
It's so funny.
It seemed like Carter was just fighting every day. And he just never won.
No. It's so funny too because like when you see, I think there is a trailer for this out, and the trailer doesn't make it look great, and I think that there is a lot of opportunity for this to just not land. But when you have a very well developed script and you combine that with really great comedic beats, and it should be underscored that the blend of action and comedy and heart in this is really well done. Like it never gets too serious. The action, while it's not like wall to wall action, they pace out. There are actually fight scenes. There are scenes when these guys will encounter people and they do fight. So it's all just so perfectly balanced. And when you see the trailer, you're just like, oh, that looks kind of, I don't know if that's going to really work. It seems kind of cheesy. It's deceptive in that way, where I think that the fact that all of these elements are so well done that it creates this really great package that sort of reminds me of like Uncle Drew in some regard. And then also the Cobra Kai series, the Karate Kid series that came out on YouTube and is now on Netflix. It kind of feels a little bit reminiscent of that, deals with some of the same themes of aging and stuff like that. But man, it's quite good, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, and I think that the thing that gets me the most is, like we said it before, but to reiterate, the fight choreography is really fucking good. Like it's exciting. The fight scenes are exciting.
Oh yeah. And even though like these guys are older now, like they still got the moves, and you know that. I mean, it's predictable. It's a predictable story. Like you can kind of see where it's going to go, like so many of these stories like this. But even though you have an idea of where it's going to go, it's still exciting. Like you still like that. Oh, these guys they're getting back into it. They're kind of sucking at first. They're losing the fights, but like in the back of your mind, you know that they're gonna come out on top, and they're gonna continue to develop their skills, and it's gonna come back to them. Like, oh,
yeah,
it's coming back. You can tell that it's coming back, and they're gonna kick some ass.
These guys breathing down. You remember to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Breathing's coming back, so watch the fuck out.
That reminds me, I also liked how they handled the whole like meditation thing where like the visuals, when he slows down his breathing and he can sort of really focus, and how they did like the kind of trails. I thought that was really well represented too. Looked really cool. So yeah, Paper Tigers, man, this it hit all the right notes for me. I think that it is a movie that came out at a moment in time when all of us are sort of yearning for feel-good movies, just things that sort of reaffirm humanity for us. And this definitely does that. I felt great afterwards.
Yeah. And I mean, again, this happens occasionally, but talking about Paper Tigers, I kind of just want to watch Paper Tigers again.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a movie that I will be rewatching. I think it did get picked up. I can't remember who picked it up, but I'm pretty sure I read that it was picked up by someone. So hopefully we'll be seeing this released fairly soon. Let's go ahead and give it a score. What are you going to give Paper Tigers?
Give Paper Tigers an 8.
I'm also giving it an 8. Really, really solid. Certainly one of the highlights of the festival for me. Looking at the festival as a whole, I think that I was a little concerned about the whole virtual edition. I was concerned that like some filmmakers are kind of holding back on submitting their movies to festivals just because of the whole virtual thing. So I was a little concerned about that, but I saw a ton of really great movies at this year's Fantasia Festival, and I think that it's still probably my like number 1 or number 2 film festival as far as like originality. Like when you watch as many movies as I do all the time, everything starts to feel the same, and like you just sort of have this yearning for something different, a unique story. And I think that Fantasia Festival does a really good job programming stories that are unique. For instance, we didn't get to cover it on the show, but I'll have a review up for Survival Skills, directed by Quinn Armstrong, which is the whole premise of the movie is that it's a 1988 police training video, and it's almost like sort of like a Adult Swim, like a really dark one-off thing where things start to get very meta and twisted, and I had some problems with it, but it definitely gets bonus points for originality. I've never seen a movie like that before. So we'll have more reviews up on the site. I posted a bunch already, so you can go read them, and then there's going to be some more that are going to be coming out throughout this week. But overall, yeah, another really great year for Fantasia Festival. And The Reckoning was horrible. The new Neil Marshall movie, which is funny because that's one that I was like really excited for because I like Neil Marshall, and this movie was horrendous. So there you have it. Any closing remarks on Fantasia Festival before we close it out?
No, I don't think so. I think I'm good.
This is I think this is is this your first year covering Fantasia?
I think so.
I think it is. I know I've covered it for like the last 3 or 4 years, but I don't think we ever actually covered it on the show.
No.
What are your thoughts? You like it?
I did. Yeah. there was a lot of other stuff that I wish I got to see, especially considering some of the ones that I did see. I wish those were replaced with other things. I think it would have worked out a lot better. But yeah, I enjoyed it because there was a lot of stuff that sounded interesting, like you said, where there's like at least some originality.
The Oak Room was another interesting one. It's all about storytelling, and it's sort of like a movie within a movie within a movie. And it sort of plays on the idea of storytelling and goosing the truth and all of that. And that was interesting. There's some docs in there. We talked about Class Action Park, and there's Feels Good Man, which is a documentary about the creator of Pepe the Frog. And that was really fascinating and really well made. There's some really good animation in that. Yeah, just a lot of really good stuff. If you're into Asian cinema, there's a lot of really solid Japanese films in there. I saw this movie called Kakigurui. Probably mispronouncing that, but it's about a high school that everyone at the high school is obsessed with gambling. It's an anime adaptation, but it's a pretty well done anime adaptation. A lot of them are really hit or miss. The Mortuary Collection is this really amazing horror anthology that is sort of this really great throwback to Creepshow and older horror anthologies that I really had a great time with. Just tons of stuff. So there's still a bunch that I plan on covering on the site, so be sure to check that out as well. There's still a handful that I haven't watched yet that I plan on getting to.
He's not done.
Not yet. This is the last week, though. We're wrapping it up. Okay, let's take a look at what we have on VOD this week. We got Children of the Sea. This is on the 1st. We got #Unfit, which is a documentary about Trump. We have A Night of Horror. This is a horror anthology. Doesn't look great. We have on the 4th, The Owners, which is a horror film. Might be checking that one out. It's got a kind of a cool premise. It's about a group of kids that like break into a house to rob it, and then they find out that there's something crazy going on in that house.
No, man, you got to be careful breaking into houses.
What was that movie? I really liked it. They're making a sequel.
Don't breathe.
Yeah. The Fede Alvarez one. Yeah, like that.
Seems to be happening a lot. You break into a house and there's bad stuff going on.
We got Feels Good Man. We have Still Here, and that's about all I got on the VOD front. On Blu-ray this week, we have Pitch Black. That's going to be a 4K release. We have The Goonies on 4K and Beetlejuice on 4K. It's exciting. And we have Terrified from 2017. This was a really, really creepy horror movie.
Oh, yeah?
I think it's a Spanish horror movie, if I remember correctly. But, man, it's on Shudder, so you can check it out on there if you have it. But it's genuinely scary.
Nice.
The 11th Commandment from 1986. Children of the Sea. Clockwise from 1986, starring John Cleese. Blood Quantum is coming out. If you haven't checked that out yet, I would recommend it. That's also a Shudder. Looks like a bunch of Shudder movies are coming out on Blu-ray this week, because Z is also coming out. That comedy Irresistible with Steve Carell, directed by Jon Stewart, that's coming out. Rogue, starring Megan Fox. Baba Yaga, Terror of the Dark Forest. Young Sheldon, the complete third season.
No. There's 3 seasons of that?
Evidently.
Come on.
Or maybe it's great, you know? I haven't seen it.
Come on.
That's pretty much it. What about Criterion's? Anything on Criterion this week?
There's no Criterions.
Taking the week off.
None. We gotta make room for Young Sheldon. You can't fuck with that. Season 3.
Gotta give
Young
Sheldon a wide berth. All right.
God.
I think that'll do it for this week. Thank you so much for listening. You can send us your questions and topics to podcast@filmpulse.net. You can follow us on Twitter @filmpulsenet and @filmpulsekevin. And if you have a minute, consider reviewing us on iTunes. That would be super helpful. For Kevin Rakestraw, my name is Adam Patterson. We'll see you next week.